Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Kanyinsola. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you for coming to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I do videos all about society, culture, politics, anything that tickles my fancy. And if you're coming back, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate you. Like the title suggests, today I'm going to be talking about something that I've been seeing everywhere. So I haven't been seeing people talk about this particular topic, but I've just been seeing people saying, I'm going to therapy. I have a therapy. So I had a meeting with my therapist. Therapy. Oh, Nanny. Why did I break out into song? Anyway, and I think it's so great that people are being so honest and so open and talking about their experiences with therapy and just saying that, listen, me, I'm going to therapy. It's basically like people are just so much more comfortable and it doesn't feel like so much more of a stigma to talk about therapy. And I love that for everybody. I really do love that for everybody. However, some people are still looking for a good therapist. Some people might feel like, is it worth my time? Will they talk to me about things I need to talk about? So I thought, why not create a video? Because I have been to therapy myself before, about how to find the good therapist. Because you can have an amazing therapist or you can have a really not so amazing therapist for you. And I think it's good to just have kind of like an idea of, okay, what would how do I also join I have a therapist gang? How do I also join them? This is based on my experience. I have been to therapy before. I have no problem saying that. I've suggested it to family members. And it's just something that most people are just open with. And a lot of us have a lot of things on our mind. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, and even if we don't have anything on our mind, it's just good to have that kind of that spiritual or just that mental support as well. So before, I used to have this kind of basic Freudian idea that therapy was just like this white man who would sit there who would listen to your problem. But therapy, from when I first knew about it, because I used to study psychoanalytics and I used to study psychology when I was like younger, it's completely different now. We Black women who are therapists, we have Nigerian therapists, Ghanaian therapists, Jamaican therapists, all types of therapists. The first things I wanted to say, picking a good therapist can actually involve picking one that is kind of relevant to you and where you're from. So they're going to understand me and kind of my background, so I wouldn't have to start explaining certain things about my culture. I'm good with that. I've had therapists before where I'd had to describe certain things. I spent more times in my session talking about where certain locations in Nigeria was and having to describe that stuff. And I spent more time describing geography than actually talking about things I wanted to unpack and talk about. So that's also very important. So for me, that's like the first thing I would say. Find a therapist who gets your background. For me, some people that might not be relevant at all, but for me, I think that's just important. Hopefully one day I can have a therapist who can join me on my channel so we can talk about certain things within our community. But there is a whole network, the BAATN network, and they have therapists from a broad range of backgrounds. It's such a great progression forward, so you now have therapists who identify with you in some capacity. Another thing, you need to check if they are licensed therapists. Are they actually qualified to say the things that they're qualified to talk about, or is it like someone who's just given themselves a title? So making sure that your therapist is actually a therapist and they've actually gone through the correct protocols to ensure that they have the license to practice. That's another thing. In the UK, we have a body that's called the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, and anyone who's on that is basically like a licensed therapist. I think there are other ways to be qualified as a therapist as well, but that's one way that I recognize, like, legit, like, yeah, you have followed the codes and the practice. So another thing I would say that's quite important when it comes to therapy is finding someone that actually specializes in what you want to navigate. So if, for example, if you have eating disorders, finding a therapist that specializes in eating disorders. If you have childhood traumas, finding someone who also specializes in that. If you're dealing with divorce, finding someone who specializes in that. So another thing is, what is their method of working, right? I've heard people, and this has happened to me, where you go to a therapist and you're literally just both staring at each other or watching the clock. And it's because maybe it hasn't been established what method they use to kind of get you to where you want to go. Like a drama therapist, you might have an art therapist, you might have a psychodynamic therapist, you might have a psychoanalytical therapist, you have an integrative therapist, you might have a holistic therapist, you might have a psychospiritual therapist. Which therapist or which method do you want to go for? Because at the end of the day, what a therapist is there for is basically take you to the water, but they can't make you drink. Different ways to get to the water. So it's just literally up to you how you want to get to the water. I said the water so much right now, I'm actually starting to get thirsty. Another thing is, how affordable are they? Do they do discounts for students? Do they do discounts if you're on a low income? Are they bundles and packs? Feel free to ask them. Feel free to ask them, because some of them might be so accommodating. They might be like, oh yeah, you're a student. Okay, this is how much I do for students. Oh, you're on low income. This is how much I do for low income members. There are different ways to kind of navigate the affordability. One group I think might be great in terms of affordability. I think I've seen them on, I haven't used them personally, but I've seen them on my Instagram. It's Frontline Therapists. They basically give people affordable therapy, or they match you with someone that can give you affordable therapy. And I've also seen BetterHelp as well. So there are different ways to kind of access therapy if it's not the most affordable thing for you at the moment, but you still want to access it. I know therapy in America is so expensive. It can be like $150 per hour. $150 per hour? I'm just like, not everyone can afford that. So finding a therapist that you can actually afford is very, very important. Moving on to finding a therapist that is able to be honest with you and you can be honest with them. You can say, I'm not really enjoying this therapy sessions, or can we navigate it this way, or can I talk to you about this? And they can also be honest with you. But all in all, make sure you find a therapist that's honest with you but doesn't project. Someone that doesn't project themselves onto you. That will sound weirder for people who haven't ever gone into therapy but might have not gone through what I went through. It just sounds a bit confusing, but yeah, find someone that doesn't project. And someone that lets you finish speaking as well. It's very rare that you find a therapist that doesn't let you finish your sentences, but if you do, maybe just express it to them. Feel free to express it to them. You are paying for that hour or 2 hours, and say, I don't really like this. I like this, but can you please let me land? That's also important. Do you want your therapist to be virtual or in person? As we all know, we can't really have in person as much. But for some people, you might find it more beneficial to have it in person. But if you can't, do they offer virtual opportunities to speak to them? That could be key for you if you are going through things and you need someone to speak to ASAP. Don't feel any shame in getting a therapist. Take your time through it. Make sure you kind of feel people out. Don't feel like just because you've already had one session with them, don't feel like you have to stick with someone that might not be serving you in the way that you need to. If you need to test the waters with other therapists, do that. But be honest as well. And remember, therapists have therapists, so don't feel any shame in having to go to therapy, because even therapists have us a therapist. They need to have someone to decompress to as well. So that's really all I wanted to say for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your own thoughts on therapy, and if you've ever gone to therapy, if you're considering going to therapy. I just feel like this year is going to be such a busy year for me that I want to have a place where I can decompress and offload at some parts. So it might not be a weekly one, it might be a bi-weekly one or monthly one, but just someone I can just refer to. And it's also important, this actually is another good point, it's also important to make sure you're linking with your community. Therapists are great and they're great at what they do, but make sure you're also speaking to people in your community. You have a friend, a partner, or a family member, people that are there for you to nurture you outside of therapy, because your therapist, you might see them once a week. You might be able to speak to them on message or text, whatever. But at the same time, there's just something about the homely connection that we have with those who already know us and who wish us well. A new side of community and the foundations that we already have, those who care for us. But as I said, it's okay to want to offload and have a session with someone who isn't so intimately connected to you. But it's weird because your therapist is very intimately connected to you as well. But making sure that you're also cultivating relationships outside of therapy to keep you on the up and up. But yeah, those are all the points I really wanted to talk about, like finding a good therapist. Everyone's like, I have a therapist, I just spoke to my therapist, and you're like, me too, I want a therapist, how do I find one? I'll leave all the links to everything that I know about where you can find a good therapist in the description box. I'd advocate therapy for anyone, but we have to just remember not everyone has the privilege to access it, and not everyone will have a good therapist. So yeah, I'm just trying to make sure everyone has a good therapist, but also is cultivating great community networks, because that's also very important. Therapy can facilitate creating a healthy you, but therapy cannot replace a community. So that's my own thoughts. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you picked something up from it. I am not a psychotherapist. Oh, I should have said that at the beginning. I am not a psychotherapist or psycho analyst, but I just wanted to discuss my experiences of therapy and the things I've learned from therapy and I've picked up from it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I really hope you enjoy this video. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see some more of me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.